Brian O'Driscoll on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us. Everyone in.
Now then, the Six Nations is but 3 days away. Brian O'Driscoll, you're there?
I am. How are you, Joe?
Very well. Good to have you with us. Time flies. 20 years ago, you were a kid who had no idea he was about to score a hat-trick in Paris very soon.
No. The naivety of youth. It was, seems not 20 years ago anyway. That's gone in a flash. But, it's some great memories, and I suppose that was the beginning of a bit of a resurgence from the Irish team and Irish rugby, via the provinces and then through the national team. And now there's high expectations every time you pull on either jersey. So Irish rugby's in a good place.
And there was plenty of interest, obviously, in Andy Farrell's first team, which is where we'll start. I think everybody listening has probably heard it at this stage, but just in case, Jordan Larmour is at 15, Andrew Conway on one wing, Jacob Stockdale on the other. Gary Ringrose, no surprises, at 13. Bundy Aki got the nod alongside him. We have Johnny Sexton at 10. We have Conor Murray alongside him. And then it's Cian Healy, Rob Herring at hooker, Tyke Furlong. It's Ian Henderson and James Ryan in the second row. And then a back row of CJ Stander at 6. Josh van der Fleer at 7, and Caelan Doris is in at 8. And then on the bench, Ronan Kelleher will get some game time, make his debut. We have Dave Kilcoyne there, we have Andrew Porter, Devin Toner and Peter O'Mahony. We have John Cooney, we have Ross Byrne, and we have Robbie Henshaw making up the 23. Just a few mitigating circumstances. Keith Earls, it seems, Brian, unable to train before the team was named. Will Addison has been in and out as well, was the phrase Andy Farrell used in his press conference. And he also said that John Cooney had missed some prep time with the HIA protocols. He didn't say how much, but certainly missed some time. So that is your team. Give us your reaction to it then. Take us through it.
Yeah, I think it's a good side. In my head, I was kind of thinking over. I got the pack right and missed out a couple of backs, thinking that Robbie might have gotten in instead of Bundy and that Keith Earls might have gotten in instead of Andrew Conway. But to be honest with you, they were close to toss of a coin. I still do think that Keith Earls is our best winger. And if he's fully fit, I still feel as though he's the guy in possession, or should be the guy in possession of the jersey, just from what he can do in attack, but on the back foot as well, defence and grass cover. Just that understanding and intellect and the necessity of what you need to know from a Six Nations point of view versus other types of rugby. So that doesn't change. But Andrew Conway's in a rich vein of form, has been since the World Cup. So I think from a confidence point of view, I think you'd absolutely be in a good place with knowing that Andrew Conway will do a good job.
I think you were just at the point of talking about Jacob Stockdale's confidence.
Yeah, I think it took a bit of a battering. We are very aware as to what an incredible first season he had, and was scoring tries for fun and found himself in the right position at the right time through, good vision or through, just being fortunate defensively. But then got caught out a lot at the World Cup and made some poor reads, and I think his confidence took a huge dent from that. Looks as though he was certainly a player that was happy to go back to Ulster and back to a system that he knew and loved, and a player that he was, he knew he was, and just to build that confidence back up again. But this is a big season for him. You have that initial burst onto the scene, then you have a bit of a dip with that second season syndrome, but the third season is vastly important to define as to what sort of player you're going to be for the next 10 years. So, we know one-on-one in attack what he's capable of doing, and I think they want to get the ball into his hands as often as they can and get those mismatches where possible. But even, one-on-ones against his opposite winger, he beats him so many times, we've seen in the last 24 months. But defensively, he's got to start understanding the system and making those reads. If he comes up and to stop the ball, you cannot afford himself to be caught in limbo, as he was a couple of times, particularly against the All Blacks and against England in the warm-up games. So I think a big opportunity for him if Keith Earls is injured, because I think Andrew Conway doesn't tend to have poor games. His standard game is a 7 out of 10, and sometimes he gets up to 9s, but he's a very, very consistent performer. So pressure on him, but a great opportunity to showcase what he's about and what he can offer to that Irish team. And then throughout, the rest, you look at Jordan Larmour. He's someone that if lots of people up north would have said Addison, and you got to go with him, what he's been able to create. But to remember that Addison wasn't picked for the World Cup and Larmour was, and he actually played well in it in a disappointing World Cup. He was probably one of the shining lights. And he's obviously a guy that Andy Farrell has, hangs a lot of his hopes for the next 3 or 4 years on him at fullback, what he's capable of doing, and the type of rugby that he wants to play. Certainly appears to be that attacking style if he's going to name Jordan Larmour as the starting fullback. The centres, again, Bundy, getting in ahead of Robbie, I don't think there's much in that. And there's no argument. Gary's the form centre, so he's an automatic pick. And then the half-backs of Conor Murray and Johnny Sexton, I thought he'd go with those two. I think Conor Murray played well against the poor Ospreys team a couple of weeks ago, and there's just a know-how from him that people don't understand. And yes, John Cooney's in a rich vein of form, but there's more to it than just scoring tries. It's about managing games, and I think that is an aspect to Cooney's game that still has to be taken on to the next level. I think Conor Murray's ability to read the game ahead of time is ahead of Cooney's, and I think that calmness and that confidence under pressure is something that I would always associate with Conor Murray. And even when he's not firing on all cylinders, I think his lesser performance is still of a reasonable standard, just to add a calm to everyone around him. And so I thought I wasn't surprised to see him partnering Johnny Sexton in the halfbacks either.
There are 5 changes from the World Cup quarter-final. Obviously, some of that is down to retirement as well. One of the arguments for Cooney was less that he was, an investment in the future, because he turns 30 this year. And it was more along the lines of, well, it's a message to everybody that this team will be picked on form, and that there was a value in that. So that was one of the big arguments for Cooney. But I suppose with 5 changes, with the likes of Herring, Larmour, Caelan Doris in the spine of the team, you can see the importance of Murray's know-how. For Cooney, there's an element now of the psychology of this, because his own form was kind of good and everybody in the media said this was a live debate between him and Murray. He's going to have to very quickly park, I'm sure, some inevitable disappointment and remind himself, well, he wasn't in a World Cup squad very recently, and now he's going to get game time in the Six Nations.
Yeah, as well, you have to remember as well that this is a 7-week tournament, and yes, the first game is huge and it's pivotal to how you perceive things going forward, but the reality is he's going to get a lot of game time. And secondly, there's massive pressure on Conor Murray to deliver this weekend. If he has a substandard game, it means Cooney will immediately be in there the following week, irrespective of what he does coming off the bench. There's going to be a change. So this is a huge game. You look back to big moments in players' careers, and something like Rob Kearney's performance against the All Blacks over in Soldier Field springs to mind, where Joe Schmidt told him, I need a big performance from you because I'm getting a lot of stick in the press for continually picking you. You've got to deliver for me. And he went out and produced a man-of-the-match performance. So I think you're going to need something of a very high standard from Conor Murray for him to hold on to his place in the coming weeks, and to give the confidence to Andy Farrell that he is back playing some of his better rugby. He's had a very sluggish, by his standards, a very sluggish 12, 18, maybe 24 months in the green jersey in particular, and because he had achieved such high standards with the Lions and with Ireland for 8 or 9 years, any dip below that, it looks quite stark. But comparably to other nines, maybe with the exception of with Cooney's form in the last number of months, they've been of that level. Their 100% is at Murray's 80%.
Yeah.
So I think it is a huge, huge weekend for him and for the remainder of his international career as to whether he's going to continue to be reckoned as the first choice scrum half.
And it's that word sluggish. When you say sluggish, is there something specific that you have in mind when you're watching his play of late? I met him a year ago, and I could see the difference in his 2
arms. He clearly was carrying that shoulder or bicep injury, what it was. There was huge wastage in it. That appears to be back. So I think when you're talking about a scrum half who has to pass the ball 85 or 90 times or sometimes more in a game, that is going to be massively detrimental to the quality of his service. And then that weighs on the rest of your weighs on your mind of the rest of your game as well. And then all of a sudden, your passing's off. Just it adds a negativity to your game. And when you're carrying that, and only warriors are able to go and play international rugby with major injuries like that. But it was so stark, the difference between his two arms, that I kind of thought, how is he still going at this? So it looks as though that's been fixed and that he's back a little bit more comfortable. His box kicking seems to be, back to where it was, and the quality of it, the accuracy of it, and the consistency of it. He's the defensive aspects to his game has never changed. He's always been the best scrum half defender that I've seen, maybe go so far as to say in international rugby. And then it's just the experience. I've never ever seen him flustered. So it's nice to have a calming nine in that regard, particularly when you've had sometimes a bit of a fiery 10, albeit we're going to see a different Johnny Sexton, than one in early years because of his captaincy role. But it's very reassuring to his pack and to everybody else when the low emotion is much the same as the high emotion.
Yeah.
The excitement, it just is. It's a calming influence on everyone.
Yeah, okay. Caelan Doris then obviously is worthy of mention. So spent his formative years just outside Killala near Ballina in Mayo, and then he was a boarder at Blackrock. Seemed to have had just an exemplary underage career, and there have been very high hopes around this guy for a long time. Even in a recent interview, he talked about how he used to love offloading in his younger days, and he's looking forward to bringing that into the professional ranks. He seems to be physical. There are, people who really know their stuff and know the back row are talking about this guy as Ireland's number 8 for the next decade. Yeah,
I first, heard his name a couple of years ago. I spoke to Stuart Lancaster, and he said this guy's very exciting. That was, when there was emergence of the new, the Dan Levy's, and Conan was coming through, and Josh van der Fleer were properly breaking onto the scene and making a big impact. And he said, there's another platter of them coming through. He mentioned Max Deacon the same way, but I think he said Caelan Doris is going to be a special player, and it doesn't shock me from what I've seen in his performances and from what I've heard that he's been fast-tracked into the national team. He looks as though he's international ready, and people are questioning why him over Max Deegan. I just feel as though you can see a know-how in Caelan Doris of just mopping up the work where, making others look good. And there's a Jamie Heaslip aspect to it, but I think he's an even more skillful player than Jamie Heaslip. Jamie was a very, very smart footballer who made those around him really thrive. Doing the simple things well, having a very low error count, and I can see all of that component in Caelan Doris's game, but he also has the ball carrying, he's got the offloading. He just appears to be a little bit more mature than all the others around him of his age and his vintage, and it doesn't surprise me to see him in there. I think he's fit for international rugby already on the basis of what we've seen with him at Leinster this year. OK, well, he'll be an exciting player to watch at the weekend. The back row generally, obviously, Van der Fleer at 7, everybody expected that. That makes perfect sense. CJ Stander at 6. So his numbers at the World Cup, his output, his work rate, whatever way you want to measure it, seems to be as high as ever. He is, from a physical point of view, this guy is putting in as much work and getting through as much work as ever. The net result maybe isn't quite as exciting. So moving him to 6, how does that dramatically in 2020, how does that change the demands on Stander? Does it play more to his strengths? Where are we on Stander? I think I'm surprised to see him in the team because you need to go forward. And you know what CJ Stander's doing, but then you still have to stop him. And he's one of our best ball carriers and has been over the course of the last number of years. And if you look throughout the rest of the team, how many brilliant ball carriers there are. Doris is a good ball carrier. Van der Fleer runs good lines, but he's quite light. James Ryan's good in close contact. Henderson, has his moments. I again, with Furlong and Keane Healy, you know, they can have those big games. Definitely not really Rob Herring. So I don't think there's any bulldozing ball carriers. You've got to have one in your team. And I think that's why he gets into the side. I presume they'll create a game plan where they will get him as a ball carrier as often as they can. And you know, I'm really interested to see how his game evolves, whether he is able to look at the likes of Caelan Doris and look at what's happening within the Leinster environment and see that offloading game and how much success they've had from it. I think it's an area that he definitely has to develop and bring on if he wants to remain at that level.
Yeah.
But there's no doubt he gives us something that very few other players do, and as a result, I think that's what gets him in the team.
Okay. The line-out will have to look out for Henderson and Herring. That combination hasn't worked, it seems, consistently brilliantly at Ulster. Ronan Kelleher has Devon Toner and Peter O'Mahony as some kind of insurance off the bench. So that's that area kind of ticked off. I saw you made an interesting observation this week. You were doing various media bits and pieces, and you said the Irish pack could do with a bit more dog. So where does this selection, where does it rank in your dog ratings?
Not very high. You know, I haven't played with all of these guys, and you get a better sense of what people are like, more so at training and their attitudes to kicking lumps out of one another versus the opposition. It's easy to raise yourself, you know, physically and mentally for, you know, playing international teams, but sometimes it's the attitude that you see at training is the one that copper fastens an opinion as to whether someone's got animal or you know, that animal or got that dog in them. And I guess I just don't really see it. I don't see too many nasty guys. You know, definitely not in the second row. Two great athletes, but they're not guys that throw their weight around. The back row, yeah, they'll stand up, you know, to something thrown at them. But are they going out? Are they the aggressors? I don't really think so. So, listen, maybe there's not as much of a necessity for it, but I always liked it as a marker of someone that when you're going into battle, that a guy to lead you and to weigh in behind, because they're not going to take a backward step. And I made it in reference to a few guys, Dennis Leaney and Sean O'Brien in particular. Paul O'Connell was another one, just that were ready for the fight. And if you look at successful teams, you look at that South African pack of, you know, the second rows that they had of Etzebeth. Then they had Mostart coming off the bench, and what's his name from Snyman, who, you know, is a man mountain who's got skills as well. They just look huggish. Yeah. For Mullen at 8, they just really they want aggro. They're the sort of people you want to partner up with and see giving you quality possession, because they're there for the fight, and that's what international rugby is about. It's a fight first and foremost, a physical fight, playing within the rules, but, you know, trying to push the boundaries as much as you can. And, you know, nice teams rarely get very far. I just would love to see, you know, one or two other individuals that can throw their weight around a bit more. Okay.
Well, interestingly, Andy Farrell was asked yesterday in the press conference, you know, kind of what's an Andy Farrell Irish team, you know? And of all the things he could have focused on, he talked about a dominant forward pack, an aggressive forward pack, unbelievably hard to handle. That's going back throughout Irish rugby history, and those are the essential parts of the game. The little bits we're trying to build on, they will take time, but he was certainly prioritising, maybe another word for a bit of dog up front, so we'll watch that. Just in general terms, because I want to get a quick word on the other teams in the competition. And I asked this question on the understanding that the phrase evolution, not revolution, is completely banned. I can't take it anymore. There have been whispers of more unstructured play and training, Mike Catt and his influence. We want to see a bit more from this Irish team in that regard. What are the kind of key markers you'll be looking at in this first game? And I know it's just his first game, so we have to be realistic, but what would you be looking at in particular which would signify to you, okay, we're moving in a maybe different direction here in certain ways? What are you looking out for in that regard?
Well, I don't think they're going to be able to change the phase play dramatically over the course of the three-day camp and last week, getting together in their trip to Portugal, and then whatever work they get done this week. You can't reinvent the wheel in that space of time. You probably need, you know, the run-up to a World Cup where you're in camp for a concerted period of time to be able to go and change and modify things, which actually, ironically, Ireland didn't do, and that was to their detriment. But it is quite difficult, and that it will absolutely take time to build a change of what Andy Farrell's style is going to be. I think there's going to be more of a willingness to throw offloads. Listening to, as you mentioned, Doris saying it was something that he always thrived himself on as well. I think that's massively important, that we don't make it as hard for ourselves as we have done over the last year of trying to bring teams through 20, 25 phases. I think you've got to look at pushing the pass a little bit more, playing a little bit looser. I'm not talking about trying to play sevens rugby, but getting a little bit looser, where you're going to put some passes down, but the ones that do stick are going to create try-scoring opportunities or potentially tries. So what happens after phases 3 and 4, the setup that you're looking at, where the pods go? Are you going to have the back rowers in the 15-metre channel? Are you going to have the front 5 in between those two 15s? And then what do they do? What little modification, what little idiosyncrasies do they have that we haven't seen before? What new ideas has Andy Farrell and Mike Catt come up with that basically you're not copying the New Zealanders and not copying South Africa? What new aspects are they bringing to the game that others will look and go, do you know what, Ireland are doing that really well, let's try and copy them.
Okay. Just briefly on Scotland, I mean, even in a bad year last year, Ireland beat them by 27 points to 3 at the World Cup, as we know. Often they come into this tournament talking themselves up and, dark horses to do something and then flatter to deceive. The Finn Russell thing has loomed large. It's a bit of a mess. It seems the dynamics between him and Townsend weren't great for some time. Adam Hastings is going to come in. Is there any upside to this for Scotland? There can be a flakiness at times to Russell, perhaps, but geez, you'd still have him in the team. Does it galvanise everybody? What's your read on Scotland after a really weird 10 days? Yeah,
it is a strange one, and I'd heard so much about how Finn Russell was maturing over in Racing, and yes, he was able to play, a style that was associated with Racing, and maybe that's why he was blooming. But there was a maturity to how he was trying to drive things, and obviously, I've read some of the reports as to what's been said or what happened, and if it's true that he went out and broke protocol, you're left in a pretty tricky position from a senior player point of view if you're looking at another one of your senior players and they're taking the piss.
And he missed training the next morning as well.
Is that what happened? Yeah.
So it seems.
Well, that's just totally unacceptable. You simply can't. You get in the piss. Like that hasn't been done for a long time. Where you turn up for the first day of camp together and haven't gone out in the piss, and then you miss a training session. That's unacceptable, and it has been for a long, long time. If you're planning on going out, you want to train better than everybody else out there. That's a rule you should apply to yourself. And some lads are able to do it. Some lads can go out and you wouldn't know that they touched a drop. It's just the way they're able to switch in, and other lads can't hide it at all. And I was one of them. So you just don't do it. And so I can understand if they cut him loose. You've got to put all your eggs in the Adam Hastings basket now, who is a nice player, but he's prone to. He's not able. He's pretty raw still. He's not able to control a game for 80 minutes.
Yeah.
I suppose Finn Russell isn't in many cases, but it feels as though there's more of that dynamic to Finn Russell now with the experience that he's had than there is to Adam Hastings. Adam Hastings looks like someone that's quite loose and quite off the cuff and exciting to watch, but I don't know if you'd want him to be captaining your ship and putting you in the right places just now. He might become that player, but he's still very young and relatively unexperienced at this level. So not an ideal situation for Scotland to be in, whether they're bullish about their prospects or not. I fancy Ireland should have too much for them, particularly at home, and looking at that Irish team in advance of whatever Scotland put out against them, I think they should be looking for nothing short of a reasonably good victory.
Okay. Before we go, a quick word on France, Wales and England. Galtier has a 42-man squad which has 19 uncapped players and just one player over 30. And Sean Edwards there as well. We know about the talent. If Edwards can get through to these guys and get them going, They have England coming to Paris on Sunday. That's obviously a key game for the tournament. But sleeping giant kind of starting to stir is the general feeling here.
Yeah, well, 2023, the obvious, the obvious goal for them, where they really felt as though they dropped the ball in 2007, losing to England in the semi-final, when they should have gone on to have South Africa in a final, in Stade de France. So I think they're still reeling from that one, and they want to put it right. They've been very impressive in World Cups, except they've fallen at the final hurdle a couple of times. So there's definitely building for 4 years' time within that squad. You look at the age profile. You'd have to be an idiot not to work that out. That they're maybe going to take a small bit of pain in the interim to give experience to these players with a view to peaking for 4 years. Whether Sean Edwards is going to be able to get through to them immediately, I think that will be a building phase over the next 6 or 12 months. But there's no doubt, if you look at good teams, what do they start with? First of all, it's their defence. Build a strong defence, make it hard to break you down, and have good discipline. Straight away, you look at the firepower that they possess. If you can see less than 20, we definitely feel as though we can score more than 20, therefore we will win the game. So I think that'll be an attitude they'll be trying to adopt. They've got possibly World Rugby's most informed player in Vakatawa, in the centre. They want to get the ball to him as much as possible. Teddy Thomas, his Racing teammate, is back in the squad after being exiled by Jacques Renault. So they'll be looking to get these guys one-on-one opportunities and throw the ball around, the way we saw Galtier's French teams when he was playing back in the 90s and 2000s. I think we're going to see. They'll be hoping for results early on in the Six Nations, but at the same time, I think it's a building curve that they're looking to, and they will be one to watch. Maybe not so much this season, but from next season on. Okay.
England will come to Dublin in week 3. So Billy Vunipola, I don't know how many points per game he's worth, but he's out. And then you have the Saracens thing. Johnny May did an interview relatively recently. He said all the players went into a room on last Friday I think it was, for about half an hour, talked it through. The sense he gave was that there was almost even a degree of sympathy for the Saracens players, that they had negotiated their contract in good faith and had been let down by people above them. So certainly any sense of angst within the team doesn't seem to be there. Not that Johnny May might broadcast it to the world if it was.
But also,
go on.
I would imagine they'll be delighted to go into England camp and get away from it. That's all they've been answering for the last number of weeks and months. Some in the press and behind closed doors, so they just want to switch off from that and put on another jersey and forget about that for a few weeks' time. A lot of them, I would imagine, are going to be looking for new clubs if they haven't already been signed up to them at this point next season. It's a very difficult situation for players to be in. It wasn't their role to go inquiring within the management whether they were being kept within the salary cap and whether everything was above board. You're there to negotiate the best possible offer for yourself and leave that up to the people in the boardroom and people behind the scenes. So I do feel some sympathy for them as players, but they will be delighted to get away from all that chat about it, and what's coming in the next few months of playing a number of different games that are going to have no impact on what happens in the following year. So they'll be pleased to be even in Eddie Jones's camp.
Yeah, they're going to win this thing, are they? Not Sunday. I mean the overall thing.
They have Ireland in
Twickenham.
In Twickenham. I can't remember. I think they also go to Cardiff in the same year. My understanding is they have us in Wales. Is that the fixture? Maybe they have. Sorry, I need to check that. But I just think with the World Cup that they had, that they've got a great foundation anyway. 4 other new coaches have come in. Himself and Gregor, Jones and Gregor are the only 2 that haven't changed over. And look at where Gregor is with the friction with one of his main players already. So I think they're in the best position to be able to continue where they've left off. And I don't think there's going to be a Grand Slam, but I think they might just pivot.
Okay, they have Wales at home as well, England. So
Wales at home. There you go. England at home, Wales at home. If they can start with a win away in Paris, I don't know if there could be a Grand Slam there, but I think they might come unstuck in that one. I think we might get a performance from that young French team early on. They'll have a speed bump somewhere else along the way, but if they can get over that one, if England get a win there, I think maybe there might be a slam on the cards.
Yeah, and then very lastly, the Grand Slam champions, I haven't heard anybody make the case for. I know Davies is missing and obviously Gatland is gone. Everyone just kind of looks at them and thinks, it just won't be their year in any great way. No,
I think they've got a very, very long injury list, particularly in the centre. The talk of playing George North is there. I've watched him a bit in the centre. He's not a centre. Okay. He was disappointing for the Ospreys against Munster. And they're definitely going to miss, particularly John Davis, who's out for a long time with I think a knee injury. So Brees Patchell is injured. Liam Williams has just come back fit again. So there's lots of guys that I think are struggling, particularly in that back line, and that's why maybe they're coming in under the radar. Yes, they are the Grand Slam champions. They are World Cup semi-finalists. But for some reason we don't give them the same credit and kudos that we do to England. They could so easily have been England's World Cup finalist opponents. So they'll still be thereabouts. The new Welsh team. We expect Wayne Pivac to get them playing the Scarlets brand, which I think we've all enjoyed as neutrals. But it'll be exciting stuff. But again, it's a building phase for them, and I'd anticipate that they'll be second or third.
Okay, listen, we'll let you go. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Cheers, Joe. Bye.
Brian O'Driscoll on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us.